Hello, everybody. I am Ben Bohman, the CTO and founder of Stratishield AI. And today I am joined with Phillip Heaton, a product manager, and Jacob Hengel, CTO of YourSix. Thank you guys for joining me. It's nice to have you on.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Awesome. So let's start just with some brief introductions as far as who you are, what you do for the company. So Phillip, let's start with you.
Yeah, Phillip Heaton. I am the product manager at YourSix, and really I'm the first line of defense when it comes to what our customers are looking for and how we work that into our entire solution, making sure that those customer needs get properly translated to our development team, and then from in turn back to the customer and how we market those out.
Perfect. Awesome. And go ahead, Jacob, quick introduction of yourself.
Yeah, Jacob Hengel, Chief Technology Officer and one of the co-founders of YourSix. So again, thank you for having me on, Ben. Happy to be here. But I run R&D as well as product management and some areas of IT, both here in the States as well as our Center of Excellence in Europe as well.
Awesome. Guys, this is a conversation that I've been looking forward to for several weeks now. I think physical security is really starting to change, and we are seeing this monumental shift into cloud-based physical security. So let's first set the stage with that. I think maybe a lot of us who are in physical security understand old on-prem physical security systems. So Jacob, talk to me a little bit about cloud-based physical security and how or why that changes the game.
Yeah, so when you talk about physical security, a lot of people think about your traditional surveillance cameras. Some people think about access control, so like your key fobs in and out of, data closets, things like that. But it's a whole ecosystem of different devices that come into the cloud nowadays. And we're finally seeing a really aggressive shift where people don't want to buy a video surveillance server anymore or a stack of servers. People don't want to buy another access control server. We do a lot of things with IP speakers for physical security deterrences, making someone know, hey, it's not just a camera set to record, but there's actually a human operator watching that, or AI triggers and things of that form. But every one of those layers you add in used to be another server or another appliance. And YourSix is really leading the charge towards everything being purely cloud-based. So all I need is a surveillance camera and the cloud, and AI logic can flow between all of those different endpoints without having to maintain so much legacy IT equipment now.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like it's simplified in some ways, but maybe added some complexities. Phillip, do you feel like this is added from a product standpoint? Do you feel like this has simplified the usage and simplified the delivery of a security-based solution? Or do you think that there's now so many complexities to it that it's just a very complex solution?
Oh, I think it's simplified it a long ways, right? There's from simply the fact that there's less hardware and other pieces of the puzzle, right? So if you look at our architecture is really like two or three items on the architecture, right? It's very much simplified. And then a lot of that is maintained through, since we're, from a cloud capabilities, we're able to look at this as like a managed service, right? And so we're able to help keep the platform up and the actual devices up and running, pushing firmware to those devices. And so from a customer and integrator standpoint, it really becomes it's a much simplified solution across the board, right? You don't have constant maintenance at pieces. You don't have, I need to upgrade licenses and upgrade software for an on-premise solution. Oh, my server went down. Do I need, add more devices? Do I need to add more servers? And so it really, to me, it's significantly simpler. And we see that you've got more people coming in and kind of being able to play in this space and say, oh, a cloud, this is easier. This is not the super complex, all this on-site hardware that I've seen in the past. So much simpler.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me, I think we all remember back when you had the on-prem, there still are some on-prem phone systems. And as an IT leader at that time, having an on-prem phone system, then we came out with the voice over IP, which is kind of this mixture of on-prem and cloud. And now most of those voice systems are completely cloud-based. And the same kind of transformation that happened with voice, I think is happening right now. And it's really exciting because if you look at the cost savings, and Phillip, you mentioned also the efficiencies it's really exciting to see that kind of transform into physical security. Jacob, you agree with that? You see where that's headed?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect parallel. People realized as cybersecurity needs and awareness started rising up, so did yeah, UCAS and things like that, where things are delivered as a service. So
Mhm.
it was one thing to bolt a phone system on a wall and let it last 10 years, but not really have to maintain it too much. You can't really do that anymore, whether it's telecom or physical security. There's these really smart devices nowadays, and people realize, A, their uptime and availability is better when someone's proactively patching and managing it. But B, it closed a lot of vulnerabilities for the business as well. So the cybersecurity side has fueled that, and just the lack of IT shortage. You know, IT is expensive and it's hard to find and retain good talent. So if that can be delivered as a
Mhm.
service, the
Yep.
experience for the end user is just so much easier. And we see that evolution almost in parallel with UCAS. People that are taking phone systems off the walls and moving their phone systems to the cloud are doing the same thing. They're taking their recording servers off the wall and putting that in the cloud too.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something I think very crucial right now, and that's this aspect of cybersecurity. And I do see that physical security and cybersecurity are starting to join forces, and that could be this push to the cloud, right, where it's more of an IT function than an operations function. It's not always, but as things push more to the cloud and more to an IT related service, it's natural for that to happen. Now, one of the questions I have come up often with customers and businesses I talk to is their concern of having their physical security cameras and surveillance and access systems hacked. We've heard it in the news. We hear how IoT devices can get hacked, and basically, especially in a hospital environment or a high security, like maybe even a banking environment, financial environment, giving people direct feed or hacking direct feeds into that environment. What do you guys, Jacob, what do you guys do to prevent that? What kind of practices and security you guys have in place to prevent IoT and other type of surveillance hacks into your system?
Yeah. So cybersecurity is really a culture in many ways. Either an organization embraces it and preaches it, and it's not just a technology, right? There's not, hey, approach cybersecurity from a technology perspective, but there's human elements, processes, and training and things. If it's not a part of your culture, cybersecurity will get away from an organization quick. And so we do see a lot of IoT providers. The largest surveillance hack ever affected about 150,000 cameras in the cloud. But we've taken that culturally very different since our inception. Cybersecurity is the first thing we talk about in everything. That's threat modeling during the R&D life cycle up front, making that a part of your DevOps practices. But then continuing through training, technology, and implementation, and then maintenance as well. It's an end-to-end life cycle that never stops. It's a program and not a project. But we
Mm,
do things like go through SOC 2 Type 2 audits annually, bring in third-party pen testers, internal teams, Kanban, continuous monitoring for the systems. All those things help, as well as actually going down to the endpoints as well. So a security camera is like a Linux server bolted on your ceiling, but people don't think of it that way, right? It's running
right.
embedded Linux. Um,
Okay.
so if you're not keeping the firmware up to that, right, you have Apache and OpenSSL and all these vulnerabilities that are really going to bite you if you're not
Mm,
careful. So taking in firmware management and owning that device and the life cycle of that device is really important for a cloud solution. And then doing things like rotating certificates, the heavy IT lift that takes a big team to do and scale.
mm.
We can automate that through the cloud, so each individual end user isn't having to build out those processes and those practices to do, just offload that to the cloud in our case. So um, proving it to our
Yeah,
customers with third-party audits is a big part of it. And then, yeah, just no port forwarding. It's common in our industry. People are like, yeah, knock holes in your firewall. You can see your cameras remotely. Well, there's ways to do secure phone homes and things like that that give you guaranteed all traffic moving over TLS when it's in transit and things like that. So it's a very different approach than the traditional world had in our arena.
absolutely. I love that. I love that thought. You said a cybersecurity and the security first approach. It's so interesting as companies nowadays, whether it could be voice, it could be even generative AI or all these different technologies that are coming out. And their focus is the technology first and then securing that environment second. I love that YourSix is taking a security first approach. I think that is it's exciting. And I think that also helps companies rest assured, especially companies that are in very highly controlled environments. I know one environment that you guys work in a lot is cannabis, which I know, me being from Las Vegas and here in Las Vegas, it is probably one of the highest uh, regulated industries, I think, in the nation right now. So, Phillip, what are some of your biggest challenges? I mean, looking at these highly regulated industries and the way that you guys are approaching this, what are some of your biggest challenges you faced in developing and deploying these cloud-based security systems? How have you overcame them?
Yeah, I think you know, you can look at it. Usually, the challenges are challenges created in the perception of cloud, right? You still are battling the perception that cloud is less secure,
Yeah.
and getting way past that challenge is there's a lot of things that very much point to the cloud as more secure, right? I mean, the things that I can detect day one vulnerabilities and react to them instantly and push out updates to our system, and voila, vulnerability fixed and attack thwarted, right? So you get past that from a customer standpoint is typically the cloud, you know, perceptions. When you move past that, it's almost less about challenges that we face, and I actually see it's much more about the benefits that we have, right? So things like we have the flexibility in these very unique industries that have all this regulation, and firearm sales has been another one we've seen where somebody comes along and says, hey, today I need 90 days of storage, and in 6 months somebody else somehow, you know, something changes and they need 180 days. Well, the flexibility to work through that really makes the cloud a very advantageous view to those types of industries, right? As they can change and shift really quickly on the move without having to go buy a bunch of servers and trying to figure out how to do it, right? The other thing is these are extremely fast growing. You know, these a lot of times it's the technology is outgrowing or is growing faster than the government and regulations, and so you do typically have these highly growing types of industries and reacting to having multiple sites and, you know, constantly creating unique places where things need to go, especially the cannabis side of things. I mean, you're from the growth side of things to the transport all the way to the sell side of it. That's a lot of, if you go on-prem, that's a lot of servers. That's a lot of places things can go wrong. That's a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of things you need to change if regulation changes. And so the cloud, actually, it's kind of the opposite. It's not a challenge. It's more of the benefits we have to go.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you one other question, Phillip, and have you tie something, because I think obviously from the compliance and some of these other challenges that you just spoke about that you overcame, those are some more complex challenges. Now, I know when deploying a new system, that could be a phone system or let's say a new physical security system, hardware can kind of creep up as this added cost. Now, YourSix has a unique approach, and I want you to talk about it a little bit. You guys have you guys can reuse and have more of an agnostic camera approach. So from what I understand, when I've worked with you guys can reuse cameras and you don't have to buy a whole new camera and don't have to buy all the hardware when it's compliant. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I think that's pretty useful.
Yeah, so we do support access cameras back a couple of firmwares back, and then, you know, so anything customers have purchased in the last 6 or 7 years. And with that, you've got people, you know, the customers made an investment or somebody has made an investment in the hardware, right? Going in and saying, hey, you need to scrap it all, throw it all out, when you can, you know, we can take it on. We know it's from once the firmware is updated that it meets our, you know, cybersecurity and we can make the connection to the camera. You really keep the total cost of ownership down, right? And so being able to reuse the cameras, if these cameras are, you know, and typically it's already tied to a networking backbone there and with a PoE switch, we've got customers that come in and move to the cloud, have a whole, you know, new setup from a cybersecurity or from a physical security standpoint, and there's no other hardware added, right? So they've moved to the cloud, modernized their system, and all they did was shift their platform, and there was no other hardware added. So yeah, very, very big, and it's definitely, you know, depending on the year and depending on the economy, it's a much easier conversation to go in and say, hey, yeah, keep all those cameras you invested in a year ago, 2 years ago, and we can make you modern.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think
whenever you can avoid that rip and replace, that's awesome. Sorry, Jacob, did you have something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to Philip's concept there is we don't force you to buy like a YourSix camera, right? There's
Right.
Axis invented the IP camera in 1996. We'd rather partner with best in breed people that, you know, they have a third of the market here in North America, Axis does. And it's a device that we can take, we can secure it, we can maintain it, we get high quality video from it, we can put AI even down on that camera, which is pretty crazy, not just in the cloud, but even on the camera, which is great. But we're not forcing people to buy our camera where if they stop paying a YourSix cloud license, that hardware stops working. And there are some people in this landscape, right? If you don't pay that cloud license, you don't get to use the camera anymore, the hardware, which just doesn't make sense to us. We'd rather stay more agnostic. And so we don't support every camera under the sun. Some I can't
Right.
secure, right? Once I
Yeah.
can't maintain it or patch it or sustain it, everybody should life cycle it out. But
Right.
there are millions and millions of cameras we can just bring right into the cloud, get rid of all the servers, and away they go. So it's a open but a properly structured approach to how we life cycle out equipment as well.